Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Daily Talk. I'm your host, Brandon, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into one of the most iconic and influential albums of all time, The Beatles' Abbey Road, which was released in 1969. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this essay-inspired podcast. As the Beatles gathered at Abbey Road Studios in the early months of 1969, the weight of their legacy hung heavy in the air. This was to be their final album together, the last chapter in a story that had captivated the world for nearly a decade. But rather than coast on their past success, the Beatles were determined to push the boundaries of what was possible in the studio after a very tension-filled sessions of the Let It Be album. From the moment the sessions began, it was clear that this would be no ordinary Beatles album. Gone were the tensions and infighting that were married in the Let It Be recordings. In their place was a renewed sense of collaboration, feelings of happiness, and a creative energy all filled within the band, fueled by the band's desire to craft something truly special. At the heart of this process was the guiding hand of producer George Martin, who was considered to be the fifth Beatle, whose technical experience and musical vision embraced the Beatles into something more than just being a popular pop rock group. He had orchestrated and done musical arrangements for the Beatles ever since their early years. Many people say that this has helped them in the long run, also making Abbey Road something truly special. Now with the end in sight, Martin was determined to help the Beatles leave an impractical mark on the recording industry, and he so did by embracing the latest advancements in studio technology at the time, encouraging the band to experiment and explore the limits of what was possible. One of the most striking examples of this can be heard on the epic song I Want You, She's So Heavy. The song's relentless, hypnotic groove was achieved through the use of an early form of audio looping. With the band members playing their parts in perfect synchronization, the result is a mesmerizing sonic landscape that envelopes the listener, a testament to the band's technical mastery and Martin's innovative production. But the true pinnacle of the Abbey Road sessions came with the creation of the album's iconic side 2 melody. Spanning nearly 20 minutes, the melody seamlessly waves together a series of unfinished song fragments, transforming them into cohesive and captivating musical journey. The technical challenges involved in this endeavor were immersive. Martin and the band had meticulously planned and executed the transitions between the various sections, ensuring that the flow and momentum were maintained throughout. The result is a breathtaking display of musical craftsmanship, a testament to the band's ability to push the boundaries of what was possible in the studio. Yet, for all its technical velocity, the melody never loses sight of the emotional chord that has always been at the heart of the Beatles' music. From the whimsical melody of Golden Slumbers to the triumphant optimistic of The End, the melody is a showcase of the band's entire career, an almost bittersweet farewell to a legacy that would never be forgotten. The band often experimented with studios that were very limited at the time, but in the end, they got something truly special out of all of that experimentation. Moving on to the music of the album is also a deeply personal and introspective work, reflecting the band members' individual experiences and perspectives. With the opening track Come Together, which was written by John Lennon. This song was the main single of the album, and ever since it was released, it has become a classic rock hit in rock stations to this day. The song was begun by John Lennon in response to a request by Timothy Leary for a campaign song to be used in Leary's run for governor of California. That resulted in one line, "Come together and join the party." Up next is the song Something, which was written by George Harrison. This track is considered a love song to his wife Pattie Boyd, Harrison's first wife, although George Harrison in later interviews offered different explanations to this. Coming up is the most ominous and fearful track of the album, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which is considered to be a song about a college student's murder. The song is notable for having a rather tedious part recorded, which was the anvil, because Mal Evans could not properly hit the anvil on time with the song, which took many takes. But in the end, Ringo was credited as hitting the anvil in the final take. The other love song on the album is considered to be Oh Darling, but in reality, it's a song about personal love loss. Paul McCartney reportedly went into the studio almost every day practicing and singing this song, but in the end, he'd always say, "Oh, that's not it, I'll try again tomorrow." But in the end, it took around 33 takes to get the final take of the song that is used on the album to perfection. What's a Beatles album without a Ringo-inspired song? Up next is Octopus's Garden, a whimsical song by the Beatles, which was mainly written by Ringo Starr and helped written by George Harrison. The inspiration for the song came from a real-life experience Ringo had while on a boating vacation. During the trip, he learned that octopuses like to hide in gardens made of stones and shells at the bottom of the ocean, which served as a heavy inspiration. And next, probably the most experimental song of the album is I Want You She's So Heavy, a song mainly written by John Lennon, which was about his wife Yoko Ono. The song mainly talks about how love is almost addicting and how it sinks you into like an overwhelming obsession. The song in the end uses a very intense tape loop which distorts with white noise, which lasts about 5 or so minutes. But besides the blaring white noise in the end of that song, we have the cult classic hit Here Comes the Sun, which was written by George Harrison in Eric Clapton's Garden. The song mainly represents the meaning of hope, as George Harrison at the time was a very spiritual person, and he hoped he wrote this song to help inspire others in terms of finding the sun, which signifies hope. Flipping over side 2 of the album, we have The Long One, also known as the Abbey Road Melody, which comprises of 8 songs, from the relaxing Sun King to the whimsical Mean Mr. Mustard. Side 2 of the album is described by fans as giving the final touch to the Beatles' lasting legacy, an almost final statement of the pure chemistry they all had together. The most notable song in that melody is The End, which has a guitar solo from Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison taking turns doing guitar solos. It also features Ringo Starr's only drum solo in the Beatles. This is the only time the Beatles have ever done a trade-off guitar solo and a drum solo, to show off all their final skills in the last chapter of their legacy. Also, most notably, the song was the very last song the Beatles ever recorded together. After this, it was all over for them. The breakup was contributed to many different subjects. The 1967 death of manager Brian Epstein really took a toll on the band. John Lennon's drug use and relationship with Yoko Ono further strained the relationship between all 4 members. They all saw the end in the Beatles, so they decided to give it one last shot and finished their career with one of the best albums of all time. Originally, Let It Be was considered to be the final album, but due to them abandoning the idea and recording sessions, they decided to give it another shot and recorded Abbey Road. Even though Let It Be was released as the last ever Beatles album, Abbey Road was recorded first, but they decided to hold back on the Let It Be album for the movie theater release of the same film name. Mixing and overdubbing process for the Let It Be album was not so great. It featured many absences for the band, such as John Lennon mainly, so considerably, the Abbey Road album was the ever last time all 4 Beatles were ever in the studio together as a full functioning band. But it was a clever way to make Abbey Road the final Beatles album, as the line, "In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make." It is essentially the Beatles' closing statement to their everlasting history. It is the last lyric on the last album they ever recorded. Let It Be was the last album they released, but it was recorded way earlier. But however, despite that fact, that last line will forever hold a true marking statement to the hearts of many music fans around the world. Today, many music fans consider Abbey Road to be one of the greatest albums of all time. It has truly innovated the way we record albums and music to this day. The sound techniques used by the Beatles are still used today to recreate that classic retro sound and classic Beatle tone that is used today. Given all the hidden context to this album, it truly makes one special album to a very special band that still holds the heart to many people to this exact day. This has been The Daily Talk with your host Brandon. All information in this podcast has been cited by thebeatlesbible.com and rollingstone.com. If you'd like to replay or listen to any more episodes of this podcast, you can visit my page. Thank you so much for sitting through this almost video essay. I hope you enjoy your day. This is Brandon signing out.